Welcome, friends. Welcome back to Tassi TV. Today we have on a very special guest, someone who has been in law enforcement for many years, who continues to fight for the sake of our country, for our rights, for the Constitution. Richard Mack was a sheriff for a number of years. He's been in law enforcement for many years. Welcome, Sheriff Mack.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. It's great to be with you, and I'm very thrilled to be on with you, and thanks for asking me to be on.
Well, thanks for coming. You have an impressive resume, and I was going to read it, but it's quite long. But you've been at this for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you into law enforcement.
Okay. Well, why I got into law enforcement is because my dad retired from the FBI, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And I tried to get in the FBI 3 different times, and this would have been the late '70s and early '80s. And while I was waiting to hear from the FBI and be offered a job from them, I thought it'd be really advantageous, and that they would like to see that I had some law enforcement experience. So I hired on with the Provo Police Department, and that's where I went to college. I went to BYU and graduated there in '78. And then I tried for about 5 years to get in the FBI, and it never worked out. And I do want to tell you, quite honestly, I have thanked the good Lord many, many times that I never got in.
Sure.
And
it's kind of a rogue organization, isn't it?
It has been for quite some time.
Yeah.
And even back when the FBI had a lot of respect, they still did some very shady things. And J. Edgar Hoover was, I always thought he was a great man. My dad absolutely loved him, but he didn't follow the law. He made it whatever he wanted it to be. And he followed, monitored, and wiretapped Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And Martin Luther King wasn't even a public official. He was just an activist.
Right.
And so, yeah. But I really wanted to be in law enforcement, and then the miracle happened that I moved home from Provo PD after 11 and a half years, and I ran for Graham County Sheriff, where I grew up and where my dad had served as an FBI agent. And he retired in, I think it was 1975, the year I got married. And hey, next year, it's my 50th. Yeah. So we're looking forward to that.
50th anniversary. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And my wife and I have dedicated our lives to the cause of liberty. And she works along with me full time in this great work. And so I was very taken aback by what I saw in government when I was a rookie cop. I said, nobody keeps their oath of office. Nobody cares about the Constitution. Nobody cares about the oath of office. And there were a lot of good people, like a very dear friend of mine that I was a rookie cop with, and we're still friends to this day. I would ask him, why do we do all this stuff? And I would argue with him, and I got to where he really started coming around after a while. And he was a city councilman in Provo for a while. And I said, Rick, you're going to take an oath when you are elected. You're going to take an oath just as you did when you took an oath as a cop. Are you going to ignore that oath? Are you going to summarily violate that oath right after you take it? I said, it's the only thing that matters. It's the most important aspect of our jobs. And do we even train today's law enforcement nationwide, anywhere, as to what the significance is of the oath of office and what our role is within the executive branch of government to to preserve our constitutional republic. What is the patrol officer's real job in relation to preserving our constitutional God-given republic? And I'll bet you there's not 100 cops nationwide that know that answer, because we don't train in that. And we train to how to use a gun and all that's necessary, I admit it. But we never train in the significance of civil rights. And that's why I'm so busy these days, because very few people actually provide that training. And I had it when I was a rookie cop, and I was converted to the Constitution. And so when I was sheriff, I became the first sheriff in American history to launch a major lawsuit against the federal government. I sued the Clinton administration, and I won at the United States Supreme Court. And I'll be eternally grateful for the 6 sheriffs nationwide who joined me in that lawsuit. And there was
only
not
6.
2. There was not 2 from any one state. It was 1 from Texas, 1 from Louisiana, 1 from Mississippi, 1 from Vermont, 1 from Wyoming, 1 from Montana, and yours truly, 1 from Arizona. 7.
So talk about that. That had to do with the Brady Bill, right?
That is correct. And
So
the Brady
tell us
Bill
a
was
little bit about that case.
Okay, well, it was a complete miracle. Mark, you've got to understand, I never anticipated, never even crossed my mind
Sure.
that I would be sheriff reelected in 1992, and that I was going to sue the Clinton administration and take it all the way to the Supreme Court. If you had ever told me that, I said, Mark, you are absolutely out of your mind. And you probably just came in from Mars or something. But it was such a miracle, and there was so much inspiration behind this, and it wasn't my inspiration. Miracles come from God, and I'm grateful that I was a part of this, but it wasn't my miracle. I am not that powerful. I'm not that smart, but God is.
You were used as an instrument, you feel?
I was a tool in his hands. And as I look back at it, there were so many miracles behind it. Even my wife, marrying my wife, was part of the miracle, because her family was very constitutional, very patriotic, and they started teaching me. And we had lots of conversations, sometimes some real arguments about this, because it took a while for me to get rid of the cloak that I was used to with mainstream law enforcement also. Oh, we got to write the tickets. We got to kick in the doors. We got to arrest all the potheads. And and didn't realize until, especially my father-in-law and my brother-in-law would present me, you're going to take an oath, and you've taken an oath. How do you keep that? And why do you even know why you take that oath? And I didn't. And then when I studied, I saw, Article 6 requires everybody in government to take that oath. So, but let me spell out for your audience. The Brady Bill was the first time in American history that Congress and the president promulgated legislation that required the sheriffs to enforce a federal gun control scheme and scam. And we already had a contract with the Federal Bureau of Prisons to take some of their excess inmates. I had to sign off on that. I had to agree to it. They couldn't force me. But now the Brady Bill comes out, and they said, the sheriffs of the United States will enforce this for us. And no, there's no money attached, but it wouldn't matter if they paid me $1 million a month. I wouldn't have done it. But no, they didn't offer anything. No grants, no money, no nothing, except, now get this, a threat of arrest if we failed to comply.
Wow. So this is huge overreach of the federal government, infringing upon the rights of the states, the rights of the people.
And we sued on overreach, and this is the Overreach case. And folks, you've got to understand this case, and I studied the case after it came out. This is the highlight version of that Supreme Court victory and decision authored by Justice Scalia. And Sheriff Prince from Montana and I were both at the U.S. Supreme Court in December of 1996. And then the decision was rendered by the U.S. Supreme Court on the last day of their term, Friday, the last day. And CBS News had put me up in a hotel in Tucson. So when the decision came out, I would be ready to go to their press conference. They called the press conference, and I didn't, they did. And I had lost my third election about 2.5 months before this. And it was all because of this. I mean, Graham
Because
County
of
is a very
this.
small county. What's that?
Because of this, you lost the election.
Oh, yes, absolutely because of this.
How so?
Because people said, oh, people didn't want an activist sheriff. They just wanted a small town sheriff that,
Really?
help women across the crosswalk in downtown and watched out for drunk drivers and, frequented
People just
the
want to mind their
schools
own business, right? But that's not what it's about when we're under attack. And obviously, this was an attack on the Second Amendment. And
I know.
your
And,
case
and my
actually
county turned
protected the
on me
Second Amendment.
and they kicked me out, but in their defense, I had to agree with them that, they said he's wasting his time. It's not even go to the Supreme Court. He's not going to win, and he's wasting our time. And we want a sheriff. And they didn't realize that I had two full-time jobs, sheriff and suing the federal government. And
Yeah.
it was such a schedule burner. I mean, my
Sure.
life was not my own. And
Yeah.
they even said Mack is always gone. So I kept a very strict journal, and I put that in the paper, and I said, anybody who can refute this, that I was not out of town, if you can show that I was somewhere, I'll give you $5,000. Well,
Yeah.
they didn't care about that. They wanted the lies, and that's politics, small town politics. And I lost. But the thing about was, this opened so many doors for me and my family and me and my wife.
Right.
Since that time, I've been to all 50 states. I've
Mhm.
done seminars and training seminars in 48 of the 50 states. I only lack Vermont and Rhode Island. I'd still like to get to those sometime. I've written 7 or 8 books, and I've talked at about 15 different universities, other schools, churches, all over the country. I've been interviewed by London, Japan, Australia, Canada, and a network in every state. And like I said, I've been to all 50 states. My favorite state by far, same thing with my wife, is Hawaii. And I've done
Sure.
probably 7 or 8 seminars in Hawaii and the different
Oh, yeah.
islands.
So what kind of
But
seminars are you doing when you travel?
Well, I call them all the same, but it's the Constitution for law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And we go over the case. The case is the big thing because this is where we get our credibility. Behind,
Right.
you would think that the Constitution would be the credibility, but everybody's forgot the Constitution.
Yeah.
So when you win at the U.S. Supreme Court, and then you bring up the Constitution and our responsibility to protect it and defend it, well, in our organization, CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, our motto is this: uphold, defend, protect, serve. And that's all about the oath of office. That comes right to the core of our responsibilities as peace officers to protect the Constitution, which thereby protects the rights of the American people. So the Brady Bill was a huge overreach, just as you alluded to. It was, and it's called the anti-commandeering case. It's called the anti-overreach case. And it's called the 10th Amendment, the most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of America. And I'll share with you some quotes. I'll start with this one. We have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish your state legislature knew that? Don't you wish
Yeah,
everybody in the country knew that we are not subject to federal direction? They're not our boss. Who formed the federal government? The states did. We did.
right, right.
And yet
Uh,
they act like they're our boss when in fact we delegated certain powers to them. And that brings me to something we need to really go over. The federal government was delegated only 5 law enforcement powers by the states. And then if they want to aggrandize themselves and as self-endow themselves with more powers, what must they refer to? Well, the states need to make sure, and the sheriffs need to make sure that the federal government refers to the 10th Amendment, where it says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the people or to the states, respectively. And so they don't get those powers. But over the years, over the decades, the federal government has stolen these powers and the states allowed it. And most of the time, the
right.
states and other governments would do that because the federal government comes into our states and steals money that is not theirs and then builds all these buildings and hires all these people. And then they send about 2.5% back to us. Folks, this is such a corrupt system. And it's not the Constitution's fault. It's the corrupt politicians' fault.
It's like it's being run by a criminal syndicate, the federal
It is.
government
It's a
at this
mafia.
point.
It's a political mafia.
Yeah.
And
So,
they're just as corrupt.
how did the federal government get so fat and bloated? Where where was the wrong turn?
Uh, FDR was one of the biggest and worst. During the Depression, people had their hand out. And of course, politicians will always try to placate and play to the people's needs. We will take care of you. We will save you. Vote for me. I'll set you free and we'll feed you again. And people give credit to FDR for ending the Great Depression, and he actually made it worse. But that's where his New Deal was socialism at its zenith, and he introduced that to the American people. And of course, we accepted it because we were hungry. And
Right.
even my grandmother, I remember her talking about FDR, what a great man he was and how wonderful he was to her. Why? Because he created soup lines and he created jobs and even though it was taxpayer expense, but he started all this infrastructure stuff and it was all federal money and federal chicanery, and it was. But I think that was the biggest turn for America, and then it just kept going from there. And
Yeah.
so look at LBJ's war on poverty. They spent about $5 trillion on poverty, and they made more of it. It's just like every time they have a war on drugs. So what is it? There's more drugs.
Yeah.
War on poverty. There's more poverty. And so a government, you have to go back to Reagan. Government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. And we've made this gigantic, humongous Frankenstein in Washington, D.C. that has come back to destroy us. And the greatest threat to our God-given American liberty is our own federal government.
Yeah, well, right now it's like a communist takeover. I mean, that's what we're faced with in this election. It's basically a communist manifesto versus the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. Wouldn't you say?
Wait. I got to stop you there, Mark. I got to stop you. That's exactly my quote.
Is it really?
We are deciding right now. We are deciding between the Communist Manifesto and our Bill of Rights.
Well, it's just out of hand. It's just out of hand, just with the border alone being
great minds think
open.
alike, Mark, and I love that you just said that. That's absolutely wonderful.
Well, just some statistics, which you probably already know. With the open border, we now have 425,000 convicted migrant criminals in the country. 13,000 of those are convicted murderers. 15,000 are convicted sex offenders and rapists. 320,000 migrant children have gone missing. There have been probably close to 20 million illegal migrants have come across the border since the beginning of this regime. I don't like to call it an administration. It's a regime.
It is a regime.
I mean, how is this all going to play out in your mind? I mean, it's pretty dangerous, actually.
This is the worst time in American history. We've come full circle, and it's even worse in America now than when the founders declared war on Great Britain through the Declaration of Independence. And now we're playing politics with it, and they completely control the outcome of the elections. And I just see nothing good coming from any of this. And folks, we have got to be prepared. We've got to work with the sheriffs, who are our last line of defense, our first and last. And I ask every one of your listeners, I ask every single one of you to join us in the holy cause of liberty. There, if you count the legitimate, remaining peaceful and effective solutions that we have left in America, you could maybe come up with two. The first one is that our Lord and Savior will come down and heal our land and stop all this evil. Well, the promise is that he would do that if we turn and humble ourselves and repent and stop the evil that we're allowing to occur in America. If we don't do that, he's not going to intervene on our behalf.
No,
that's his promise.
We wouldn't deserve that grace.
Exactly. So now, if we leave it to us now, we have one peaceful and effective solution, and that is the counties and the states making the corruption of Washington, D.C. irrelevant, kicking them out and keeping them away from us, and we take back our Constitution county by county. Folks, that is not going to happen unless you are involved. And let me reiterate, the solution that we have is peaceful and effective because you are involved and your sheriff is leading the way with you at his side. If we don't do that, this is not going to remain peaceful, and it's not going to remain effective. Go to our website, go to CSPOA, become a member of our posse. Yes, there's a whopping $11 a month, which keeps us going financially. And we provide the training every Wednesday, and we do a lot of other training for you. Make sure that you are working with your sheriff to create a posse in his county, because you are the Minutemen and women for his posse. And so we have that solution, and I have yet to see another one that is effective and peaceful anywhere in America. Now, look, do I think that we're the only game in town? Of course not. We have to have shows like yours. We have to have the media. We have to have education. We have to have the word spread like we're doing right now. And I'm thankful for that. But as far as boots on the ground solutions, your sheriff and you are it. And so if you want our help and you want to see about this Supreme Court case that totally backs what we're doing, let me give another quote from this great, amazing, miraculous decision. Scalia quotes the Federalist Papers, Federalist 51, and he says this: hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. End quote. Let me insert something here. Well, how does that happen? He continues, quoting again, the different governments will control each other at the same time that each is controlled by itself. Folks, it's our job, it's our duty to make sure that out of control tyrannical bureaucrats are not oppressing the people, are not destroying our republic. and are not allowed to do this anymore. Folks, standing in the way, it's a doctrine of interposition that is totally supported by this and by our own Constitution. It's there. It's for us. It's the ultimate defense we have. And Scalia said this. How about this for a quote? But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. Folks, it does if we have the leadership there to protect it. The Constitution doesn't defend us on its own. It's in the hands of all the people. We the people, the first three words of the Constitution. You've got to be involved in this. Join us in this holy cause of liberty and help us take America back county by county.
So we need to do this at the local level. There's really no other way.
Yeah, it's the only way left.
Tell us about the role of the sheriffs, their importance in this, all of this.
Well, that's the $10,000 question, and thank you. First of all, what's the difference between the chief of police and the sheriff? Well, it's obvious. The sheriff is the only elected law enforcement officer anywhere in the United States. In your county, how many law enforcement officers do you elect? One. Therein lies the power of our constitutional republic. The people choose. The people are in charge. We, the people, appoint the sheriff. He reports directly to us. Do you know, folks? The sheriff has no other supervisor. He has no other boss. We, the people, are his only boss, his only supervisor, and he answers to us. The chief of police answers to the town manager or to the city council or to the mayor. He's appointed by them, and then he's pretty much supervised by the town manager. He has to answer to their political agenda. The sheriff answers to you, and within the promise that he will uphold and defend, protect and preserve the United States Constitution, and thus protect your God-given rights. You join, you get the people and the sheriff working together as a cohesive unit. We win and we take back America. We will train you, help you. We've already got books. I've got a book on my website, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. It's 50 pages. I think it costs $9. This is the most important book you could have. It fits in your shirt pocket or it fits in your purse. Then County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, and then the proper role of law enforcement. It's 30 pages. Can you see a trend here? I kind of copied Thomas Paine. He was a pamphleteer, and so am I. This is 12 pages long. And my books are all very short. Are You a David? I think is 125 pages. Folks, we need everyone to answer the call. Are you a David? Will you answer the call as David did of old to stand against Goliath? Yes, this is a true David versus Goliath story. My story is a true David versus Goliath. And I had 5 stones out of the creek, and I slew the David at the United States Supreme Court. Folks, again, that's a metaphor, because I do not advocate violence of any kind and never have. In 20 years of law enforcement, I never committed an act of violence against another human being. Oh, I tackled a few guys. I pinned a couple of guys against the wall and said, you know what? You're going to jail. Do you want to get beat into jail, or do you want us to just handcuff you and take you in? It's up to you. And folks, most people would see the reasonableness behind that. And I didn't want to hurt people, and I still don't. But folks, we've got a huge decision that we're a part of, whether we like it or not. We are deciding in November if we're going to accept the Communist Manifesto as the American rule of law, or if we're going to keep our Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights.
This is really huge. And you know, they stole the last one, and they're going to try to steal this one. But you think it's too big to rig this time?
I hope so, but I don't know. I hope Trump's strategy will work. I pray that it will. But I honestly believe if they don't want Trump in, he will not be in. That's my
Well,
bottom line
they've tried
belief.
to
But
stop him, and they are already talking about not certifying the vote on January 6th. I
right,
voted myself. I voted from
yeah,
here, actually.
I voted today. My wife and I voted today. We've never voted early. We vote on election day, but because Trump and everybody else, Carrie Lake's a good friend of mine, uh, they said to go vote early. So I'm trying to comply with what they're saying.
We don't know what
Uh,
kind of shenanigans they're going to pull on
we
election day,
don't.
so we got
And
to get
and
the vote in there somewhere or the other.
yes,
Uh,
exactly true. Now let me tell you a quick story. Folks, back during COVID, a pastor by the name of Rodney Howard Brown was arrested in Florida, in the Tampa area. He was arrested by the sheriff, no less.
hmm.
And I've called that sheriff to repentance, and I'll do so now again. Sheriff Chronister, I hope you've repented and that you will never do anything like that again, and that you will understand your oath of office and keep it and protect the Constitution of this great country. But nevertheless, the next day he called a press conference and bragged about how he arrested Pastor Rodney Howard Brown, who has since then forgiven the sheriff. But I asked him face to face, Pastor Brown, I know you would forgive him because you're that kind of a man and you set the example as a good Christian. But has he repented? That's the key to all of this.
Yeah,
And he said, I
and
don't know.
he's
But
got to
on
be
the
held
other
accountable.
hand, we have Sheriff Glenn Hamilton in New Mexico, who was contacted by a pastor in his county. And he said, Sheriff Hamilton, this was Dr. Caleb Cooper, the pastor of this church. I don't even remember what town it is, but it was in New Mexico. I think it was Sevier County. And he went to the sheriff and he said, Sheriff, I am not closing my church down because you see, the government does not run my church.
That's right.
Jesus Christ runs my
Yeah.
church, and it is essential to the well being of the people in my congregation. We will not
Well,
shut down. My
these were
question to
all
you,
illegal mandates.
well,
They
yeah,
were
of
all
course,
illegal mandates.
all of them were stupid as heck
Yeah.
and illegal. But so he said this, Sheriff, what will you do to protect my church and my congregation? And Sheriff Hamilton said, in no uncertain terms, if it takes me having to go to jail myself, I will do everything in my power to protect you and your uh,
Well, that's a
parishioners,
real sheriff.
congregation.
That's a real sheriff. Because when you become a sheriff, when you become a police officer, you take an oath to uphold and protect the
Of course,
Constitution.
of course. And you
And
know
all of
what?
that stuff was absolutely
He, the
anti-constitutional.
sheriff confronted the state police coming to shut him down. And he said, I've deputized every member in that church. They're under my authority and they will remain open. The state police left, never came back, and Pastor Cooper didn't shut down 1 second of any Sunday ever. Not ever. Because we had a sheriff and a shepherd working together, and a sheriff who was creative and courageous enough to stop the nonsense and stand for the Constitution.
You know, people really need to know their rights. And I think during this whole COVID nonsense, people didn't know their rights.
Yeah,
And people were far too compliant as far as I'm concerned. That's when I bought
they
my
were.
guns. I saw the
Yeah.
writing on the wall. I said, this is absolute tyranny. This is what they're going to use this for. This has nothing to do with any kind of illness or disease or virus. This is just the encroachment of tyranny. This is their final act as far as I
It
was
was
concerned.
social engineering.
Exactly what it was. And they also
Yeah.
wanted to see how compliant people would be.
Including sheriffs.
Yeah.
But
And
I'm proud to tell you there were over 500 sheriffs nationwide. There could have been more, but the ones I kept track of, there were over 500 sheriffs that stood up and said, we will not shut down. We will not enforce these ridiculous mandates. We will not arrest people for not wearing a mask. They even told grocery stores, don't call us to come and arrest somebody not wearing a mask.
Huh.
You know, if you don't want to check them out, I guess don't check them out. But just so you know, we are not coming there to enforce these ridiculous mandates. So most of them just, you know, took a live and let live policy. And two of the Safeways that I went to regularly here in Arizona never mentioned it. If you weren't wearing a mask, they never mentioned it.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the power, right? That's the power
Of course.
of the sheriff, and that's the power of people cooperating with the sheriff, understanding their rights, which
Right.
is really key.
Right. So I recommend everybody go to our website because we're doing one other thing right now. We have a major project. We're asking all the sheriffs in this country, the attorneys general in every state, and the governors to initiate criminal investigations against all public officials in Washington, D.C., and maybe elsewhere, some states perhaps, in this administration, including Biden and Harris, anybody else, that they will initiate criminal investigations for their treason and their aiding and abetting illegal immigration into this country. That is a crime.
Absolutely.
If they brought them in intentionally and helped them come here, that is easily treason. But all of it is aiding and abetting. And you could look at the crimes that have committed that you talked about earlier when you were given all the statistics. Well, how many? And we're not for sure, but we think it's about 100,000 or more. 100,000, at least 100,000 international terrorists from Iran, Iraq, and other Middle Eastern places have infiltrated America, folks. And they're working with the cartels and gangs of Latin America and other places. Folks, what do you think they're doing here? And thus the reason that we need sheriffs and you to get prepared. We've got to come together with this, folks. This isn't messing around time anymore.
No, this is
life and death for us and for our country.
This is really bad, and I don't think we could survive 4 more years of what we just had. And I think the next 4 years will be a lot worse. I never thought I'd see anybody worse than Biden. Not that it really matters, because these people are just puppets anyway.
Yeah,
but she's worse than Biden, actually.
Yeah. She and Hillary, Nancy Pelosi, and
these people are characters. These people are criminals.
Obama,
straight up, just absolute criminals.
I mean, that there's people that bow down to Obama, and they still bow down to Bill Clinton, and all he was a pervert. And
well, you
so,
have the media, which is mind controlling people, and that is a big issue there. And people are, you know, the media preys on people's emotions, you know, rather than encouraging them to use their logic. But there's no truth in it anymore anyway. It's just,
folks, you can see our letter on our website, front page. The Gateway Pundit just published it. And it's getting a huge response. So you could go to the Gateway Pundit and get it there. We're passing this around all over the country. And this is the key part of this. One of our good constitutional sheriffs from Arizona, Sheriff Mark Lamb, I talked to him about this, and he goes, hey, Mac, I got to tell you, and we're actually distant cousins, and we both grew up in Arizona. But he said, this is really funny. This is really coincidental that you're asking this, because I started criminal investigation against Alejandro Mayorkas just about a year ago.
Wow.
And I now have it placed on the county attorney's desk for prosecution.
Yeah.
Folks, you want to push this. You want to be a part of this. This is part of the peaceful and effective solution that we're offering you to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. These people are criminals, and they got to go. Okay, Sheriff. I really appreciate it. CSPOA.org, I believe, is the website.
That's it.
Everybody
Folks,
go there
make a
and check it
donation.
out.
Anybody anywhere in the world can make a donation. We'd prefer all of you to become part of our CSPA posse, CSPOA.org. POA, Posse, and become part of the solution with us.
Okay, thanks, Richard. I really appreciate you coming on today, and the work is amazing. You're tireless.
I thank you too for your courage and for the work that you're doing, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.